won't hurt," she coaxed. "You have to wear it. The air outside stings." The little face remained steady, but the eyes were fearful as Jane slid the transparent mask over his head and tightened the elastic. It pulsed slightly with his breathing. "Better wrap him in this," Pete suggested, pulling a Doroplast jacket out of a locker. "Air's tough on skin." The girl nodded, pulling on her own respirator. She stepped quickly into her Doroplast suit and tied it. "Thanks a lot, Pete," she said, her voice slightly muffled. "See you tomorrow." Pete grunted as he watched her wrap the tiny form in the jacket, lift it gently in her arms, then push through the door. The girl walked swiftly up the street. It was quieter now, but in a short time the noise and stench and garishness of New Reno would begin rising to another cacophonous climax. The strange pair reached a wretched metal structure with an askew sign reading El Grande Hotel. Jane hurried through the double portals, the swish of air flapping her outer garments as the air conditioning unit fought savagely to keep out the rival atmosphere of the planet. There was no one at the desk and no one in the lobby. It was a forlorn place, musty and damp. Venus humidity seemed to eat through everything, even metal, leaving it limp, faded, and stinking. She hesitated, looking at the visiphone, then impulsively pulled a chair over, out of the line of sight of the viewing plate, and gently set the little boy on it. She pulled the respirator from her face, pressed the button under the blank visiphone disc. The plate lit up and hummed faintly. "Patrol office," Jane said. There was a click, and a middle-aged, square-faced man with blue-coated shoulders appeared. "Patrol office," he repeated. "This is Jane Grant. I work at the Elite Cafe. Has anyone lost a little boy?" The patrolman's eyebrows raised slightly. "Little boy? Did you find one?" "Well, I saw one earlier this evening," she faltered. "He was sitting at the edge of the street, and I took him into the cafe and fed him." "Well, there aren't many children in town," he replied. "Let's see." He glanced at a record sheet. "No. None's reported missing. He with you now?" No." He shook his head again, still looking downward. He said slowly, "His parents must have found him. If he was wandering, we'd have picked him up. There is a family that live around there who have a 10-year-old kid who wanders off once in a while. Blonde, stutters a little. Was it him?" "Well, she began. She paused, said firmly, "No." "Well, we don't have any reports on lost children. Haven't had for some time. If the boy was lost, his parents must have found him. Thank you for calling." He broke the connection. Jane stood staring at the blank plate. No one had reported a little boy missing. In all the maddening confusion that was New Reno, no one had missed a little boy. She looked at the small bundle, walked over and slipped off his respirator. "I should have told you the truth," she murmured to him softly. "But you're so tiny and helpless, poor little thing." He looked up at her, then around the lobby, his brown eyes resting on first one object, then another. His little chin began to quiver. The girl picked him up and stroked his hair. "Don't cry," she soothed. "Everything's going to be all right." She walked down a hall, fumbling inside her coveralls for a key. At the end of the hall she stopped, unlocked a door, and carried him inside. As an afterthought she locked the door, still holding the small bundle in her arms. Then she placed him on the bed, removed the jacket, and threw it on a chair. "I don't know why I should go to all this trouble," she said, removing her protective coveralls. "I'll probably get picked up by the patrol, but somebody's got to look after you." She sat down beside him. "Aren't you even a bit sleepy?" He smiled a little. "Maybe now you can tell me your name," she said. "Don't you know your name?" His expression didn't change. She pointed to herself. "Jane." Then she hesitated, looked downward for a moment. "Jana, I was called before I came here." The little face looked up at her. The small mouth opened. "Jana." It was half whisper, half whistle. "That's right," she replied, stroking his hair. "My, but your throat must be sore. I hope you won't be sick from breathing too much of that awful air." She regarded him quizzically. "You know, I've never seen many little boys. I don't quite know how to treat one. But I know you should get some sleep." She smiled and reached over to take off the rags. He pulled away suddenly. "Don't be afraid," she said reassuringly. I wouldn't hurt you." He clutched the little ragged shirt tightly. "Don't be afraid," she repeated soothingly. I'll tell you what. You lie down and I'll put this blanket over you," she said, rising. Will that be all right?" She laid him down and covered the small form with a blanket. He lay there watching her with his large eyes. "You don't look very sleepy," she said. "Perhaps I had better turn the light down." She did so, slowly, so as not to alarm him, but he was silent, watchful, never taking his eyes from her. She smiled and sat down next to him. "Now I'll tell you a story, and then you must go to sleep," she said softly. He smiled, just a little smile, and she was pleased. "Fine!" she cried. "Well, once upon a time there was a beautiful planet, not at all like this one. There were lovely flowers and cool running streams, and it only rained once in a while. You'd like it there, for it's a very nice place. But there were people there who liked to travel, to see strange places and new things, and one day they left in a great big ship." She paused again, frowning in thought. "Well, they traveled a long, long way and saw many things. Then one day something went wrong." Her voice was low and soft. It had the quality of a dream, the texture of a zephyr. But the little boy was still wide awake. "Something went very, very wrong, and they tried to land so they could fix it. But when they tried to land they found they couldn't, and they fell and just barely managed to save themselves. The big beautiful ship was all broken. Well, since they couldn't fix the ship at all now, they set out on foot to find out where they were and to see if they could get help. Then they found that they were in a land of great big giants, and the people were very fierce." The little boy's dark eyes were watching her intently, but she went on, hardly noticing. "So they went back to the broken ship and tried to decide what to do. They couldn't get in touch with their home because the radio part of the ship was all broken up. And the giants were horrible and wanted everything for themselves, and were cruel and mean, and probably would have hurt the poor shipwrecked people if they had known they were there. So do you know what they did? They got some things from the ship, and they went and built a giant. And they put little motors inside, and things to make it run and talk, so that the giants wouldn't be able to tell that it wasn't another giant just like themselves." She paused, straightening slightly. "And then they made a space inside the giant where somebody could sit and run this big giant and talk and move around, and the giants wouldn't ever know that she was there. They made it a she. In fact, she was the only person who could do it, because she could learn to talk all sorts of languages. That's what she could do best. So she went out in the giant suit and mingled with the giants and worked just like they did. But every once in a while she'd go back to the others, bringing them things they needed. And she would bring back news. That was their only hope. News of a ship which might be looking for them, which might take them home." She broke off. "I wonder what the end of the story will be," she murmured. For some time she had not been using English. She had been speaking in a soft, fluid language unlike anything ever heard on Venus. But now she had stopped speaking entirely. After a slight pause, another voice spoke. In the same melodious alien tongue, it said, "I think I know the end of the story. I think someone has come for you poor people and is going to take you home." She gasped, for she realized it had not been her voice. Her artificial eyes watched, stunned, as the little boy began peeling off a skin-tight, flexible, baby-faced mask, revealing underneath the face of a little man. End of Foundling on Venus by John and Dorothy de Courcy.